Hi folks, let's have a look at a different GCSE 6-mark question. This time, in terms of the way that the question's presented at the beginning, it's slightly different than some. The command word doesn't become immediately apparent. So here we go. Ishan is inspired by performers in the run-up to the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games and is determined to improve his performance. He decides to set SMART targets as a first step to achieving his long-term goal. But then there's a second part of the question where the command word exists. And remember, we need to find that command word first. So there it is, and it's discuss. Now we know that this is linked to Ethan. Okay, so in any examples that we may be asked to provide, we've got to use Ishan as our focus. And the content, the things that we need to understand from the spec are here, okay, the SMART targets. And it's about Ethan as well, improving his performance. Okay, so we've broken down some of the things. SMART targets, helping to improve performance for Ishan. And then it says, discuss the use of target setting to improve this performance. You must make reference to examples in your answer. So it's not giving us a great deal more information, but it has given us this command word discuss. And we know that means to explain the content, but also look at the other side of things if SMART targets weren't used. And to start off, what I want to do is give an introductory paragraph that really explains why target setting, whether they're SMART or not, is useful. Okay, so here's my start off paragraph. Target or goal setting helps to ensure that training is more purposeful and more relevant to an individual's requirements. It allows progress to be measured and improvements seen. Target setting can help maintain motivation and prevent the performer becoming disheartened with small setbacks. So I've got some marks straight away because I've talked about why goal setting in its widest sense is useful. But of course I need to go into a bit more detail. So here it is. Setting SMART targets is an effective method of giving structure to your training and therefore improving your performance. And now this next sentence gets me a few marks straight away because I've identified the key words in the spec. SMART targets are ones that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Okay, so with that bit of information there, I should have hit some points quite quickly. Now, what would you do next? If you were going to write this, what would you do? Would you talk about Ishan? Would you go into more detail on one aspect? What is it you think we should do? What I'm hoping is going through in your mind now is to explain each part of this, each of the acronym, each letter of the acronym, SMART, or the abbreviation more accurately. So I need to explain what specific is, what measurable is, what achievable is, what realistic is, what time bound is. Okay, so here we go. Okay, now this is the big part, okay, the big chunk of text that gets me, I guess, a good chunk of the marks. So specific targets, I'll just highlight them as we go through, are ones that have clear goals so the performer knows exactly what they want to achieve. And then here's the example, which is linked to Ishan, and we'll colour that green. For example, Ishan would need to decide which event he was going to train for so that he can make training relevant. And then I've identified measurable target is one that can be quantified. For example, here's the example. For example, Ishan, let's just colour it up so we can see it, could set a target for a specific distance to work towards or a time to achieve. I'm just going to add that in because that's important. Measurement of his performance during training would therefore be straightforward. An achievable target, so here we go, the third blue one, is one that's possible for the performer to complete. Now, I haven't written the words for example here, but nevertheless I've mentioned the word Ethan, so it must be linking back to the question and giving a practical example. Ethan would need to identify his current performance level and challenge himself without exceeding what he's capable of. It would not be effective to set a target of running the 100 meters in 9.7 seconds if his current time was 12.5 seconds. So achievable means is that target possible by the athlete? A realistic target is very slightly different. It means, is that target possible by any athlete? So I've written here a realistic target, we'll colour it blue, should be possible by an athlete and would take into account what is likely to be achieved during the training in terms of performance. Finally, a time-bound target. Oops, that should be blue. Sorry about that. Let's just colour him in again. Okay, he's now blue, is one that has a specified completion date. For example, Ethan would be trying to achieve his target within 6 months, or by the time of a future competition that Ethan may be planning on entering. It would also be useful for Ethan to set short, medium and long-term targets so that each stage of his improvement was manageable. Short-term targets could be refreshed or adapted as he made performance improvements. Now, this last bit, in all honesty, would be a bit of showing off. It's not that essential that you mention short, medium and long-term targets, but it does show that I really understand the concept of something being time-bound or time phased. And again, I've written in here, for example, to start that bit of the paragraph off. So you can see, if you look back at this paragraph, that I've got key term and an example, key term and an example, key term and an example, key term. Ooh, have I got an example there? No. So let's put one in. For example, only elite sprinters. We don't know that Ethan's a sprinter, but he could be, and we're giving an example which is linked to Ethan's performance. It could well have been when he was watching the Olympics, he was looking at a tennis performance, and that's fine, but we're just going to use athletics in this sense. For example, only elite sprinters could set a realistic target that was below 10 seconds. Okay, and that's important because it just gives me, again, that nice balance of key term, example, all the way through the question. Okay, now the next bit, if of course time allows us to do this, is that we need to put in what might happen if targets weren't there. Okay, so or smart targets weren't there. So let's have a look. And I've written here, if targets were not smart, then training would have no focus, and Ethan would not be working on what is relevant to his requirements, and it would, therefore, be difficult to make significant improvements. There would also be no framework for Ethan's training, and he would, therefore, not be able to set new targets once an old target is achieved. Finally, and I'm just going to check my grammar there, finally, Ethan would not be able to measure his progress or monitor his effectiveness. This would decrease motivation and the performance level could deteriorate because, of course, we're talking about improving performance with smart targets. If they weren't there, then performance level could even get worse. He could get injured. He certainly wouldn't be focused and wouldn't be seeming to make those improvements. And then I'm just going to finish off with this conclusion, and it's useful to put a conclusion at the end of an argument or a discussion. The way that we're being presented with that command word, discuss, means to argue, doesn't it? It means to put your point of view across. It means to consider other points of view, and it means for you to come up with this conclusion. And it doesn't have to be long. You can see it here. In conclusion, it's important and would be a distinct advantage if Ethan sets himself targets which are smart to ensure he remains focused and on target to achieve his long-term goal. Dead straightforward. This may be more text than you would have time to put in, but you can see the concept of what would get you a full 6 out of 6.